Who wants to be the next Italian wine ambassador? Join an exclusive network of 400 Italian wine ambassadors across 48 countries. Vinitaly International Academy is coming to Chicago on October 19th to 21st, and to Almaty, Kazakhstan from November 16th to 18th. Don't miss out. Register now at vinitaly.com.
Welcome to Wine, Food and Travel with me, Marc Millon, on Italian Wine Podcast. Listen in as we journey to some of Italy's most beautiful places in the company of those who know them best, the families who grow grapes and make fabulous wines. Through their stories, we will learn not just about their wines, but also about their ways of life, the local and regional foods and specialities that pair naturally with their wines, and the most beautiful places to visit. We have a wonderful journey of discovery ahead of us, and I hope you will join me. Welcome to Wine, Food and Travel with me, Marc Millon, on Italian Wine Podcast. Today I'm delighted to travel this morning to Campania, to the Campania Felix of antiquity, to a wine zone where grapes have been grown for more than 2,000 years, and to where the Romans' most famous Grand Cru, Falernum, was once produced. We're at the pioneering and iconic wine estate of Villa Matilde at Celole in the province of Caserta, and my guest today is Salvatore Avallone. Buongiorno, Salvatore. How are you today? And is it a beautiful day?
Good morning, Mark. This is a wonderful day in Campania. So you know that Naples is the city of the sun, and today we have a shining sun in the sky, blue sky, on the vineyards of Villa Matilde.
Okay, that's a beautiful image in my mind. Now take our listeners to where you are. Describe the wine hills of the Monte del Masico, Roccamonfina. Describe where you are so our listeners can get in their minds this beautiful image of the sun shining on your vineyards.
So we are in Campania region. Campania is a southern region of Italy, is the region of Naples, Capri, Positano, Amalfi, and many, many beautiful places, very well known all around the world. But in the same time, Campania probably is the cradle of the Italian winemaking. More than 2.5 millennium ago, the south of Italy was a big Greek colony, and you know that the wine industry was created by the Greek population that in that time, for the first time in the history, planted some vines in our land.
Okay, well, that's a very important historical reference. The Greeks before the Romans. Now, we met more than 30 years ago, Salvatore, when my wife and I were researching and writing our book, The Wine Roads of Italy. And you shared with us the Villa Matilde story, which is an exciting and inspiring story of curiosity and scholarship, as your father, Dr. Francesco Paolo Avallone, undertook extensive research into the origins of ancient Falernum wine. Can you tell us about the work of your father? He wasn't a winemaker originally, was he?
Yeah, he wasn't a winemaker. He was a lawyer, a big lawyer in Naples, and at the same time, teacher in the Neapolitan University, specialized in Roman law, ancient Roman law. So the story of my family, the story of Falerno, the story of winemaking in the south of Italy is strictly connected because in the 50s, my father launched a project to bring back to life the ancient Falerno wine. Falerno was the favorite wine since the time of Julius Caesar and Cleopatra, and remained not just a wine, but a legend, a top wine of southern of Italy. Was very rare, very expensive, and the same was for more than 2.5 millennium. Unfortunately, in the second half of 19th century, Phylloxera arrived in Europe and in the area of production of Falerno destroyed about 97-99% of the vineyards that was cultivated in that time. So the Falerno production disappeared. My father, I told you before, was a teacher in University of Naples, and very often during his study on the ancient Roman books, he found some celebration of the characteristic of this famous wine, the Falerno. But at that time, in the middle of 20th century, it was impossible to have a sip of this type of wine, to taste and to have an idea what was the characteristic of the Falerno. So he had the idea to try to bring back to life the production, the vineyards, and then the production of the ancient Falerno. So with a small group of friends, he started involved in the agricultural department of Neapolitan University. He started the project, he launched the project to study the characteristic of the grapes used since Romans' time to produce the Falerno. He invested more than 15 years of research in this study. And finally, after this long story and many weekends invested to walk around the ancient Falernus production area, finally he found 5 vines of white grape varieties and 15 of red grape varieties survived to the Phylloxera. That was the direct descendant of the grapes used during Roman imperial age to produce the ancient Falernum.
That is an amazing story, Salvatore. That out of curiosity and scholarship, uh, this research into ancient grape varieties and as well into the terroir, into the territory where Falernum had been made, it resulted in this beautiful project. So Villa Matilde came from this project, born out of passion and dedication to the ancient past. And today you, your sister, and your children are continuing the Villa Matilde story.
Yeah, it's true. I am the second generation, but my son Francesco and Paolo and my niece Cristina are the third generation involved in this beautiful job. And we have the responsibility and we are proud in the same time to produce a wine like the Falerno with 1,500 years of history.
Yes, absolutely. And you said that your father studied ancient texts, the poetry of the Romans, Horace, and also, of course, Pliny the Elder, who may have been the first writer to link wine with terroir and to note that the quality of wine is directly linked to the place where the grapes are grown. So tell us about the land of Falerno. Tell us about this fertile volcanic wine zone and why it is such a beautiful place to grow grapes. And what grapes do you grow?
Yeah, it's a unique terroir because Falerno has a unique characteristic. So imagine what was our land 2,500 years ago when the Greek and then the Romans planted their vineyards in a land in which there was nothing. So they had the opportunity to choose the best terroir to plant the vineyards. And they selected the area around the Roccamonfina volcano, a beautiful land that was and is entirely surrounded by a crown of mountain, open in south direction to the sea coast, but from all the other direction, surrounded by the Aurunci mountain, the Massico mountain, the Roccamonfina mountain. So it's a very well protected area by this crown of mountain with another special characteristic, not just volcanic, not just close to the sea, but with the mountain of the Appennino on the back. And this is very important for the aromatic characteristic of our wine because we are in the southern region and you can understand what in some area so well protected and well surrounded by the crown of mountain, the temperature easily can rise up at 45 or more Celsius degrees. And in this condition, the flavors of the grapes could be burned by the hot temperature. But from the mountain of the Appennino during summertime, every day from this mountain down to the sea, blow a fresh breeze that refresh the temperature of this area, of the fields located in this area, that is exactly the same production area that the Romans used to for cultivate their grapes more than 2,000 years ago. So, fresh breeze from the mountain, volcanic soil, southern climate, and the flavors of the seacoast that are very close to this terroir give to our grapes and, of course, then to our wines that special characteristic that also today we can have in our wines.
Okay, that is a really beautiful description and a very clear description of a precise terroir that has been producing great wine for 2,500 years. Now, I know your father was very precise and in his researches into grape varieties. And as you say, he found the remains of ancient grape varieties that had been grown continuously up until the time of Philosopher. Tell us about the most important grape varieties and the link to antiquity.
Yeah, the main part of research of my father was to have the correct description of what was the ampelographic characteristic of the grapes used since Roman's time to produce the Falerno. He made this description with the elements that was described of the grapes that was described in the ancient Romans books. With that type of description, they compared my father and his friends that was involved in this research compared the characteristic of some vines survived the philosopher to to found the right grape variety that was similar to the characteristic of the grapes described in the ancient books. Today we can say that the grape varieties that was used since Roman's time to produce Falerno was and are a special biotype of Falangina grape, locally still today called uva falerna. Uva means grape, so falerna grapes. And for the red wines, again, a special biotype of Aglianico and Piedirosso. So it's part of this family, but with special characteristic that the grapes has evolved in more than 2.5 millennium of history of evolution. So these grape varieties are very well balanced with the characteristic of our terroir, the climate, the soil, and so on. So if you taste the wine produced with these grape varieties, you can understand that are similar but not the same of the Falanghina, Aglianico, and Piedirosso wines.
Okay, so that is really interesting, and I know as well that Falangina now is a grape that is planted more widely in other parts of Campania, a grape variety that some of our listeners will have encountered. But Falangina may not have existed if your father hadn't worked to propagate those vines that he found to safeguard this ancient grape variety for us all to enjoy today. Is that correct?
Yeah, yes, we can say that has been a big part of the revaluation of the Falanghina grape. In the 50s, when the research of my father started, the Falanghina was considered a stupid grape for wine production without uh, quality, without the special characteristic that we know that this type of grape has. But I have to repeat again. So the Falerna grape is a special biotype with special characteristics, similar to the Falanghina, but not exactly the same. It's important to say that the name Falanghina comes from a new technique, new for that time, 2000 years ago, to grow up the vines. When the Greek population arrived in the south of Italy, they used to grow up their vines with the same technique that today is still used in Greek islands with the kuluri technique of pruning. This technique means that the shoots and the grapes and the bunches of the grape are located just up to the soil, just on the soil. So in touch with the soil and with the humidity of the soil. But this type of cultivation is possible in very, very dry climate condition. The south of Italy, okay, is a southern region, but not so dry like the Greek islands. When they arrive in our region, they start to use this type of pruning system. But for the humidity of the soil, the bunches was impossible at the right maturation in the bunches because become hill before the maturations. So they had the idea to put close to the vine a wood stick to put the shoots, the bunches, on this wood stick and far from the humidity of the soil. The name of the wood stick in ancient Latin was phalanga. So all the grape varieties used and cultivated with this type of new technique was called grapes from Falanga. So the Falangina basically is the name of the technique. So today we can have many different biotype of grapes, similar but not the same, because the name Falangina is still used to identify many biotype of grapes in Campania region.
Okay, that's fascinating too. Again, linking it to the way the grapes were trained in antiquity. Now, just sticking with the history, Salvatore, I know it's difficult to try to understand how Falerno wine was in Roman times, but can you say something about the different styles of Falerno that the Romans made?
Yeah, is totally different, totally different because the wine used to ferment the mast with the pomaces, with the stems for all the time of fermentation, but they used to age the wine with the pomace in the stem in the same time in their amphoras. You can understand with this very long contact create a different, totally different characteristic of wine, very rich in tannins. Wines was very aggressive to the palate. For this reason, they used to age this wine up to 100 years in their amphoras, and then the amphoras very often was located in a wide room called fumarium, located under the rooftop of the Roman villas. Villas is a Latin word again that means farm. So in their farm, this room fumarium was the area in which all the smoke produced in the fireplace of the villa was concentrated. So you can understand that a wine fermented and aged for more than 100 years, smoked for the same time, and then stored in some amphoras with the great uh, evaporation through the microflorus of the clay. So it was a product totally different compared with the idea that today have of the wine. So it was something closer to a balsamic vinegar, was a cream for concentration, and also for the acidity, the tannic concentration, and the characteristic of the wine. So the Romans very often used to blend this type of product with water, often with seawater, honey, spice, with many different recipes that change for the different period of the year and basically for the religious occasion in which the wine was enjoyed. So the Falerno of today has the root in that story, in that tradition, but of course is a wine with a touch of the actual modern technologies.
Okay, that is such a fascinating description of how the greatest wines for the Romans were wines that would age in amphora for more than 100 years. I know Pliny the Elder has a description of drinking a Falernum from over 100 years ago, and he talks about such is the nature of old wines because they would have been such extraordinary wines to taste. But of course, as you say, the modern Falerno that you are producing at Villa Matilde is made using both modern technology but also ancient methods as well.
Italian Wine Podcast. If you think you love wine as much as we do, then give us a like and a follow anywhere you get your pods.
Can we talk about your flagship Falerno Bianco, the Vigna Carracci Falerno del Massico Bianco? Tell us how you produce this wine.
Yeah, Vigna Carracci is the name of a single vineyard of the production area of Falerno. But like the classico Falerno del Massico Colle Castrese, Vigna Carracci is fermented and aged in amphoras, the same amphoras that was used since Roman's time to produce the Falerno wine, both white and red. About 30-35% of the must is fermented in clay amphoras, and the 60-70% of the must ferment in stainless steel in temperature controlled situation. We still use, like the Romans used to do, the maceration of the skins of this type of wine, but we balance the extraction with a short time of skin contact. So the meaning of short is from 2 up 12 hours, depends the characteristic of each vintage. So the Carracci is a blend of the ancient traditional style of winemaking for Falerno from one side, to the other side, the best modern technologies, because we produce wine for the actual people, not for Julius Caesar and Cleopatra.
Okay, that's a very good description, Salvatore. And I think you're right. I don't think many of us would enjoy tasting that wine in amphora for more than 100 years that had been in barrels over the fumarium, where smoke coming up and flavoring the wines too. But I know everybody would love to taste your Vigna Carracci. I tasted it at Vinitaly this year, and I'm looking at my tasting notes, and I noted the beautiful concentration of fruit and aromas, yellow fruits, pineapple even, peach, balanced with this energy and tension and an acidity that will allow it to age for considerable periods, and a beautiful, tingling mineral finish. So I think it's one of the great white wines of Italy, and I've really enjoyed tasting it.
Thank you, Mark. For us, it's very important also uh, to say that Vigna Carracci, okay, is a white, but we start delivery this type of wine minimum after 4 or 5 years after the harvesting time. So all the wines, the white wines for Campania, are wines with a very big aging potential. Okay, we don't goes up to 100 years of aging like the ancient Romans, but we can enjoy our Falerno after 10, 15, 20 or more years of refining in your cellar, in your bottle. And the wine is incredible for the characteristic of the evolution.
That's a very important point, Salvatore, because mostly we think of Italian white wines as not wines with a great aging potential, but these great wines of Campania, and I'm including here as well Fiano di Avellino, and Greco di Tufo, great wines also with links to antiquity that have this wonderful capacity to age and evolve over decades.
Yes, I agree totally. I totally agree with these words. And I don't understand why for the people is normal if they drink a wine from other countries to drink wine after 3, 4 or more years. And for Italians wine, they think that this is not true. Of course, the terroir depends what type of wine you drink and also what is the producer that make this type of wine. The philosophy of Villa Matilde is to reveal the characteristic of the terroir of the grapes in our wine, but also to improve the aging potential of this type of beautiful grape varieties and terroir that we have in our region to produce wine with a big aging potential, with the classic Falanghina to the Greco to the Fiano, and of course for our special Falerno del Massico.
Well, let's talk about the red Falerno then. It's interesting, Salvatore, that Falerno for the Romans wasn't just from one particular grape variety, but there would have been different colors of Falerno from both the Falanghina white grape as well as from these two great grapes, Aglianico and Piedirosso. I guess that wine that had aged for 100 years on the skins would have taken on its own amber color, but the Falerno del Massico red wines are also very important. Tell us about your Vigna Camarato, this super Campagna wine.
Camarato is like a Carracci, a single vineyard in the terroir of Falerno del Massico. But I have to say that you can have a white Falerno, a red Falerno, of course, made with different grape varieties because Falerno is not the name of the variety, but Falerno is the name of the geographic area in which this type of wine are produced since Roman time. For example, like Bordeaux. In Bordeaux area, you can have a white Bordeaux, a red Bordeaux, produced with different grape varieties. Bordeaux is the name of the terroir in this type of wine is produced. The same for Falerno. Falerno is the name of the terroir. The amber wines of ancient Rome was made with Falangina. The red type is made with a blend of Aglianico and Piedirosso. Camarato is a red Falerno made with 90% of Aglianico, about 10% of Piedirosso and other indigenous grape varieties from Campania region. So with my sister, with Maria Ida, we start to bottle the wines produced in Vigna Camarato, and for the first time in 1983, because every year during our testing after the vineyard, the harvesting time, sorry, we had the clear image of a vineyard in which the grapes and the wine produced from the grapes from Vigna Camerato had every year a special profile, a special testing. So we decided to bottle this wine separately from all the other Falerno that we produce in our own vineyards. So it was a cru inside the cru area of Falerno. Yes, we are lucky because lucky people, like producer, because our father rediscovered the Falerno. He bring back to life the beautiful vineyards, the beautiful varieties of this area. And in this area, we have so many different climate and soil characteristics that we can have beautiful wine like the classic Falerno red and white Colle Castrese, or with the special cru Caracci and Camarato. That has been the story of the best reds in the south of Italy.
Okay, well that's so interesting as well, and as you say, to emphasize that Falerno is the wine zone, the territory with both white and red Falerno being produced. Now I know you also have an extensive range of wines and an estate in Irpinia where you produce great wines such as Greco di Tuffo, Fiano di Avellino, and Torasi. We won't have time to talk about those today. Perhaps we will on another occasion. But I'd like now to turn to the gastronomy of your part of Campania. I think it's probably more difficult to link the foods of antiquity with the odori e sapori of today, the tastes and flavors of today. But can you tell us some foods that are very typical of where you are and which pair particularly well with the wines of Villa Matilde?
Yes, thanks for this question because it's very important that the people can understand that the Falerno is a special wine, old but in the same time a modern wine that can have the right wine pairing with many different preparations of the actual gastronomy, of the modern gastronomy. For example, for Caracci, we suggest to have the best, in our opinion, the best wine pairing could be with the Bottarga preparations in Sardinia, for example, was very popular to have the spaghetti with Bottarga sauce. But in the other area, closer to us, in Campania, for example, we used to have a soup of lobster made with a pumpkin sauce that is very, very special. Or, for example, with risotto con radicchio and burrata. Burrata actually and radicchio are very popular not just in Italy, but all around the world. The white Falerno, the Colle Castrese, used to match this type of wine with the classic preparation, like for example spaghetti alle vongole. But we suggest, for example, to try this type of wine with some souffle, vegetable souffle preparation, or aubergine, or for example with fried cod or some spaghetti with cod.
Beautiful.
In my opinion, there is also the most simple way to to enjoy Falerno with some grilled bread with butter and a small piece of anchovies on the back. Try it. That is, in my opinion, is beautiful.
Beautiful. That sounds wonderful. What about pairing your Falerno del Masico Rosso?
Rosso is in our end, the Falerno since 20 years ago, 30 years ago, was identified with the Falerno itself. So we have many different type, but basically of wine pairing, but basically with meat preparation. The Falerno Classico is typical to match it with the ragu sauce. Ragu sauce is a sauce with tomatoes, many different type of meat, and cooked in the Neapolitan tradition for more than 12, 14 hours at very, very low flame, so low temperature. But you can enjoy it also with typical meatballs, fried or stuffed with the brasato meat. I love a lot to drink, and I do often during my winter time, to eat a glass of Falerno Rosso with a piece of a piece of Parmesan, well aged, and I spend my winter evening on the fireplace, a glass of Falerno and some piece of Parmesan. The Camarato is a full-bodied red wine, and we used to match it with lamb. Basically, is the most traditional wine pairing with lamb, roasted lamb or stuffed lamb, and with buffalo meat. Buffalo is close to the bison in US, and also with aged cheese from Campania or outside the Campania, like Montemagno, or with a well-aged pecorino from Sardinia.
Okay, those are beautiful pairings that I can almost smell that ragu alla napoletana, this beautiful pot of slow cooked meats, and also imagining you sitting in front of the fire in winter, just simply enjoying the camarato with a piece of aged cheese. Salvatore, I know that your family have long been very welcoming hosts to visitors. You share the story of Villa Matilde and also of the broader land from where you are from. Tell us about wine hospitality at Villa Matilde. The Locanda del Falerno sounds like a very special place.
Thank you. Thank you. Rocanda del Falerno is our uh, agriturismo restaurant in Villa Matilde main cellar, in the ancient cellar in which we produce the Falerno, and is located in the middle of one of the two tenute that we own in the ancient Falerno area. The tenute is close to the sea, but we own another one in the hills of Falerno. So we have used to serve in our restaurants the wine pairing and the special receipt that I've described before, and with a wine pairing with our wine. So normally, when the people comes to visit us, they don't select, they don't order the food, but before they decide what type of wine they want to have during the meal, and we suggest the dish that they can pair with that type of wine. So is vice versa what we do normal in a restaurant, because this is a restaurant with a special focus, of course, on the wine. We are a wine producer. So we want to promote before all the things, all the foods we want to promote, and we want to communicate to our customers what is the magic of Falerno. Falerno is not just a wine. I said that when I started beautiful conversation with you, is a legend and a concentration of 2012 millennium of culture, of history, of flavors of Campania region, and also with the touch of love, of passion of our family that is involved, totally involved in this beautiful job to be a wine producer of Falerno wines.
Salvatore, thank you so much for spending time with us this morning. You have taken us, you have conveyed the magic of Falerno, the links with the great wines of antiquity and the great wines that you and your family are making today. So thank you so much for taking us to Villa Matilde, sharing your beautiful family story with us, the story of your father's passion and research. And I hope that our listeners who are located all around the world will be inspired first to try your wines, to find your wines, and then to come and visit. I send my very best wishes to you and to your whole family, and I hope to see you soon.
We hope you enjoyed today's episode of Wine, Food and Travel with me, Marc Millon, on Italian Wine Podcast. Please remember to like, share, and subscribe right here or wherever you get your pods. Likewise, you can visit us at ItalianWinePodcast.com. Until next time, chin chin.